Namaste. Among the many spiritual disciplines that emerged in ancient India, few have been as badly misunderstood as Tantra. So, in this video, I seek to clarify 5 very important misunderstandings or misgivings about Tantra, which will then highlight the unique profundity of this discipline. So, make sure you watch the video till the end. So, the first very important misconception about Tantra is that it is the ritual component of the Vedic corpus. So, the Vedas basically carry the insights, whereas Tantra is basically all about ritual. Because in India, particularly, people who call themselves Tantra practitioners or Tantrics are basically people who do rituals to address disease or rituals to appease planetary forces or different things to bring peace at home and all those things. Now, this is a very, very important misconception. So, in the Vedas, there are 2 divisions, the Karmakanda and the Jnanakanda. Karmakanda means the ritual part, Jnanakanda means the insight part. The Jnanakanda is what forms part of the Upanishads, all the insights into non-duality. Now, Tantra is not the same as the Karmakanda of the Vedas, no. There is a very big difference between the practices and the rituals that are done in Tantra versus what happens in the Karmakanda of the Vedas. See, the single most important difference is that when the Vedas talk of yajnas or such practices, the objective is to harmonize the individual with forces of nature, to seek favors from divine energies, to fulfill one's wishes, etc. So it's more of appeasing the divine, worshipping the divine, and glorifying the gods, etc. Whereas Tantra is singularly focused on only one thing, which is to liberate the individual, to expand one's awareness, and to help them, realize their divine essence. Tantra is focused on self-realization. So in some sense, Tantra is actually the Jnanakanda. It is just that it has very effective practices which, help embody the insights rather than just keeping them at a mental plane. So Tantra is not the Karmakanda. Tantra is not just focused on appeasing energies or seeking divine favors. No, that is a very big misconception. The genuinely Tantric understanding does not expect you to see God outside of you. It expects you to see yourself as an extension of the divine source. And when we meditate on these divine forms in Tantra, Tantra only gives them as much importance as, seeing a mirror reflection of ourselves in order to adjust ourselves. When you comb your hair, you look at a reflection of yourself. You don't sit there glorifying the person in the mirror, because there is the understanding that that person is you, that person is an image of yourself, and therefore you need to change something here. And when that image looks well dressed and everything, you have attained what you wanted to. So that is the massive difference between the Vedic Karmakanda and the Tantric practices. The second misconception about Tantra is that it is a very dangerous discipline. This is probably more commonly spoken because Tantra talks of Kundalini, Tantra talks of the chakras, Tantra talks of the nadis, the subtle energies flowing in the body and all that. So there is this widely propagated belief that this is like walking on the edge of a sword, and if it misfires, it can be spiritually ungrounding, it can make people mentally and emotionally ungrounded, and therefore one must find a very qualified guru. Yes, a qualified guru is a great blessing in any field, but let's not single out Tantra as some particularly dangerous discipline, because the really dangerous thing is not the discipline, but the immature ego of the seeker, of the sadhaka that participates in the discipline. See, the ego is the master misinterpreter, the egoic self. When the self is immature, when it is power hungry, when it is attention seeking, when it is significance driven, any path will be dangerous for the ego self. For that matter, the way people chase power and money in the world, or they chase importance, or they chase romantic attention, don't you think these things are far more ungrounding in the world? Don't you think it results in a lot more mental and emotional turmoil in people? So when the ego is unchecked, when it is unexamined, when the ego is allowed to live surreptitiously, and operate through you, any discipline you participate in can become dangerous. We regularly come across stories of cult dynamics, misuse of power by heads of spiritual traditions. Sometimes unfortunate sexual abuse happening within so-called spiritual organizations. So the ungrounded, unexamined ego is the cause of all trouble, not the discipline itself. So it is not like Bhakti Yoga is a much more safer path. You have yoga teachers getting caught in scandals. You have other gurus getting caught in scandals. You have in all religions there exist these specimen. So therefore Tantra is not particularly dangerous. Just because it talks of Kundalini, just because heightened experiences, spiritual experiences are possible, it does not mean that there is a lot more scope for misfiring and some kind of psychological emotional breakdown. No. In fact, Tantra offers a greater chance at confronting one's inner darkness straight on. There's no beating around the bush in this path. Which is why it is called Vira-Sadhana, the path of the really brave, the really courageous. And, if somebody is only coming for solace, if they're only coming for sops or for some kind of spiritual appeasement, or if somebody just wants the security of being part of a cult or something, then perhaps they should not embrace this discipline. They should perhaps use other ways to first ground themselves, and then maybe get into this deeper practice. So the unexamined ego, wherever it goes, is the master misinterpreter. It is the biggest source of trouble. So Tantra is not particularly dangerous. Let's not single out Tantra as some double-edged sword or some dangerous discipline. It is not. It is actually very profound. So that is the second misconception. The third important misconception about Tantra is that it is basically glorified sensual or sexual indulgence. Unfortunately, a lot of, in Western societies, there is a lot of talk about sacred sex. Now, Tantra only seeks to, help people experience life fully, to have the full intensity of every experience. Now this is akin to the Buddha saying, in the seeing, just the seeing, which means the senses have come so alive that there is no mental chatter happening behind sensory experience. The senses are free to fully participate in every experience. And when the mind switches off, when the eyes are able to see and enjoy something without the mind's interference, when the body is able to feel reality without the mind's interference, every experience feels very intense, it feels very divine, it feels very whole. So the cunning calculative mind, because of its need to cherry pick, because it selectively wants license to participate in certain experiences, the cunning calculative mind need not glorify certain experiences with the adjective sacred. Because in the tantric perspective, if sex is sacred, death, sorrow and separation are also sacred. If you can go into this fully, why not go into this also fully? If you can embrace sorrow fully, there too you will realize your divine essence. So there need be no cherry picking here. Tantra need not become a glorified license for sensual indulgence. That is the profundity of this discipline. It teaches us to go into every experience fully. And when we go into every experience fully, the artificially erected barriers of pleasure and pain, of good and bad, these fall away. The mind does not cherry pick anymore. The mind does not selectively participate. There is full-on participation in life. So that is the third misconception. Tantra is not about it's not limited to only sexuality, or it is not about sensual indulgence. It is not at all about that. Like I said, the first misconception, Tantra is about self-realization. It is about realizing one's divine essence. The fourth misconception is that Tantra is not for those in the world, because its practices are so intense, and because it calls for a lot of meditation and lot of concentration. It is only for full-time practitioners, adepts, babas and sannyasis and yogis. Only they are qualified to go into this. On the contrary, it's the opposite. See, the very edifice of the Tantric understanding is that embodied life is divine expression. Embodied life is sacred. I don't wish to put down the Vedantic discipline, but just to draw contrast, in contrast, the Vedantic discipline claims that embodied life is an illusion, is Maya. And your true nature, you have to center yourself in that. So you have to basically sort of disclaim or let go of all this embodied, figments of Maya, the neti experience. I'm not this body, I'm not this world, I'm not my sensory experiences, and you have to center yourself in. Now, don't you think this is more anti-mundane existence? On the contrary, Tantra does not talk of Maya as being separate from your divine existence. It talks of Shiva, or your divine existence, himself playing out as embodied existence also. So Tantra gives value to the concept of Lila, the divine play. This body is every bit sacred as the divine core. So it is the divine core consolidating as this body. So the two are not really separate. And therefore, Tantra is actually the discipline for self-realization while in the thicket of mundane existence. It does not necessarily require you to separate yourself from mundane existence. It has emerged as a way to liberate you while being embodied. You don't have to dismiss embodied existence. There are people who may choose to dedicate themselves fully into it. They may choose to not take upon themselves the responsibilities of a family, or they want to distance themselves from social responsibilities and everything. That I would call the divine design, the divine architecture of that person. But that is not something Tantra necessarily enjoins. It is not that it espouses such a view that you have to dismiss worldly existence in order to realize your divine core. No, it's actually the opposite. Tantra teaches you to embrace this embodied existence, to see this as sacred, to see this as divine Lila, divine play. It's an extension of that pure awareness. So Tantra is not anti-mundane existence. And lastly, Tantra is not about sorcery. It is not about witchcraft. It is not about some dark magic. I think somehow, unfortunately, that is the stereotype that has gotten attached to Tantra, at least in India. The word Tantric has gotten attached to people who do occult practices to attract powers, mystical powers, supernatural powers with which they can control minds, or they can play with your energies and etc. Tantra is not at all about that. Like I mentioned earlier, when the ego self is running amok, it is running out of control, it will certainly come up with such grotesque versions. It will misuse and it will destroy sacred disciplines. Tantra does not glorify darkness. You might wonder that there are very serious tantric practices where one is supposed to meditate in a dark room, or sometimes one is supposed to meditate in lonely places like a crematorium or whatever. So this is not about glorifying darkness. This is not about trying to gain control over dark energies. It's not about pacifying spirits. It's none of that. It is Tantra's methodology to help us confront the darkness within. See, the darkness, the fear and the struggle that comes with a very active ego self, it far exceeds the darkness that comes from being alone in a crematorium or meditating in a dark room. There is so much of destruction the self is capable of, and that needs to be paid attention to. So Tantra is about confronting the deepest and the darkest dimensions of our being. Every human being carries something like that in them. It might not express in them because of all the social injunctions and everything, and divine design is also part of it. It could lie deep down in the subconscious mind, but Tantra is about confronting that, is about liberating that, so that there are no tethers for the soul. There is nothing holding you back. So all these practices are not about some dark sorcery type of thing, but it is actually journeying towards the light. It is about ending inner darkness so that one can truly come face to face with the profound light that they themselves are. Tat Tvam Asi, you are that light, you are Shiva, you are divine. And if you remove all these dark layers created by the sense of separation and by all these illusory projections, then you come upon something very profound. You see that all of embodied existence is full of the light of the divine. So, Tantra is not about sorcery. It's not about mind control. It's not about exhibiting supernatural powers. We again and again have to go back to the first misconception that the Tantric focus is singularly on self-realization, on helping an individual realize their divine essence. So these are the 5 major misconceptions, misgivings about Tantra, and I hope this video has brought you some new insights. Tantra is very uncompromisingly focused on self-realization, and it is a very courageous and a bold path towards realizing your own divine essence. So if you found this video insightful, if it has given you something new to think about, please like this video and please subscribe to the Shuddha Vidya channel by pressing the bell icon. And you could also follow me on Instagram. Shuddha Vidya is the name of my Instagram handle as well. And I'll be regularly releasing more such spiritually insightful content to support your inner well-being. Thank you and namaste.